Great. And we'll also have a transcription together. Good. So, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us on this panel. We are the Young European Biologists. We're an international network of young biologists and students committed to advancing science and education. Our mission is to connect young scientists across Europe, represent biology students from diverse backgrounds, and foster collaboration between academic and scientific communities. Through our platform, we aim to support knowledge exchange, professional development, and international collaboration. So that's a little bit about us. And today we have a panel on DIY bio. So thank you for joining us. I want to preface our conversation with a bit of a clarification statement about DIY bio, the community/concept. It can be, depending on where you are, it can be a bit of a controversial topic if things are left undefined. So let's try to do that. What was born out of an increasing ability to standardize biological parts and growing alongside the communities of makers and hackers, do-it-yourself biology is a real network of people, groups, and communities who conduct biology research, biology education, biological bio-art outside of formal institutions. They build tools, they gather people, and they make science worthwhile for citizen scientists, amongst others. It's a community that values open science principles and safety and holds up an ethics code to that effect. The type of DIY bio that you do can depend on your region. So it is easier in some regions. So, for example, in North America, in the North American region, to do DIY bio than it is maybe in Europe. And it can be useful for educating people in the life sciences, for creating art, conducting science research, and more. In this panel, we have a very diverse group of people representing a diverse amount of regions too. We have Kingston, who is joining us. Kingston, who is joining us from the African bioregion. Josh and Sebastian, represents sort of the US-based DIY community, Sophia Sanchez from the Latin American community, and Andri and Lemana from the European region. I think this discussion is a lot about making science accessible, enabling innovation, and the foundational necessity for collaborations between different types of institutes, different types of spaces, and ways of doing biology. So with that introduction, I would like our panelists to give a short introduction about themselves. How do you see yourself in this space? Who are you and how do you see yourself in this space? I think, Sophia, you can start the intros.
Sure. Good morning for people on this side of the world. And yeah, I see myself as right now as someone who does some kind of biocommunications. I try to not to make biology more interesting for everyone, because I think that is sort of impossible, but yes, to bridge some of these worlds within biotech, like investors and founders and researchers with very, let's say, industry focused lens. So not really, I don't really talk about basic science on my blog, but more about what's happening with startups and companies. And by the way, self-promoting here, you can check out some of the weekly newsletters that I sent there, and yeah, some podcast episodes that I've recorded there as well. I started doing DIY bio during the pandemic just because I wanted to learn about biotech, and that was the most accessible way to do it during those times. I was born and raised in Mexico, and I'm currently studying a bachelor's in biotech engineering.
Wonderful. Josh, would you like to continue?
Sure, I'll go. First of all, thanks, Sarah, for inviting me, and hello to my fellow panelists. It's a pleasure to be joining you guys talking about one of my favorite topics, DIY bio. I'm Josh McGinnis. I call myself an independent scientist. I do not have a traditional background as a scientist. My background is actually in computer science. But a few years ago, I sort of got burnt out from coding and decided I wanted to learn state-of-the-art biotechnology. So I created a lab in my home. And over the last couple of years, I've developed quite a bit of research around filamentous fungi. That's my area of research and natural product discovery. And I've since published papers as an independent scientist and collaborated with academic institutions and other scientists from around the world on all things fungi, because that's where my passion is. I started off very, very basic and was resource constrained, like a lot of independent scientists and DIY biologists, and slowly have grown in complexity. And one of the things that I love to do is to help new people get started and help them overcome a lot of times it's mental barriers to getting started. People get overwhelmed with the prospect of what it means to create a home lab and start doing research. So that's a real passion of mine. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Great. Andrei, please.
Hello, everyone. Super glad to be on this event and on this panel. Sophie, a big fan of your writings on LinkedIn. So I'm originally from Estonia, and so what we've been doing for the last 5-ish years is trying to build up a non-profit organization, which is called the Biocatalyst Foundation, aimed at helping the region, which is the Baltics and Central Eastern Europe, kind of the eastern half of Europe, if you wish, to catch up in terms of biotechnology ecosystem development. And one of the things we've always wanted to do is having a community lab model or shared lab model across the region. And late last year, we finally got support and some grants from the city of Riga. And so now we are kind of building up this community lab in Riga, Latvia, based and inspired a lot by our friends in Copenhagen at the CPH labs. On a personal level, I've been doing DIY SynBio for quite a while, both as an individual, like in a kitchen, and then as a startup, a scrappy startup. And now we are trying to create this space where all kinds of stakeholders can collaborate, hopefully mutually beneficially, including industry, research institutions, academic institutions, and even the governmental institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrei. Kingston, please introduce yourself.
Hello, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I'm traveling right now, so I won't be putting on my video. So I'm Kingston Niaka, and I'm a co-founder of a biotech company called Plasmigene. So I'm currently based in Durban, South Africa. And the reason why we started this company is because we were really frustrated, by the time that it takes for us to import reagents and so forth that we use for our research. So sometimes it will take maybe 2 or 3 months to get what we need. And more often when we get those reagents, they don't usually meet our needs. So this problem, it caused us, or it made us to think of starting this biotech company. I can say it's a do-it-yourself, platform that we are creating. So mainly we are into constructing plasmid vectors because it's one of the most important tools that we need in the work that we do in gene cloning and protein expression. So we've created a platform where we construct plasmid vectors, and the server database that is in Spain has been of help to us because they have these modular plasmids that we order for free. Then another partner that is very important for us is the Reclon community, basically the reagents collaboration network, where you share reagents, you share protocols. And also there's another community called the Beneficial Bio. So this is a community of biologists who are mainly in the global south region, you know. So these are biotech owned companies, companies that are owned by scientists, to be specific, scientists who are in biology or in biotech. So we kind of share resources, we share protocols, and we even share, for example, we can share knowledge on developing something new. For example, our company is based in South Africa. Then in the community, in the beneficial bio community, there might be a company that is based in Brazil. So they can actually transfer their technology to us, because for them there is kind of a de-risking, because their market is different from our market. So that's how we collaborate. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for making the excellent making the excellent statement about collaboration and ensuring that protocols, tools can be used actually across regions. I think that's a very key aspect of what a lot of you are trying to do or doing. Lemana, please take a moment to introduce yourself.
Sure. First of all, hello to everyone, and thank you for inviting us on this panel. I am actually substituting for my colleague Amra, who is currently traveling. By profile, I'm not a biologist. I'm a biomedical engineer. I have a double PhD in applied AI for medical imaging and for integration of smart software into medical devices. But we at VetLab Institute are really multidisciplinary, and we are working on a variety of projects, including both biology, biotechnology, biomedical engineering, AI, and medical devices. So considering the fact that we are based in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we are, when it comes to our, let's say, societal involvement, we are really keen on supporting any prospective research by helping in writing grant applications, by including ambitious young people into different consortia. Basically, we have a lot of partners throughout Europe and throughout the world, and we are currently participating in more than 10 Horizon projects. So on a quite variety of topics. So I could say that we have really a developed network of people with which we are working and trying to establish state-of-the-art research in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you for the introduction. Let's discuss pursuing sort of research or pursuing biology in sort of lab, like home lab, these informal environments versus in the traditional environments. I want to ask each of you, are there any projects you would have not pursued otherwise if it hadn't been for a sort of this informal lab setting? Or alternatively, what made you decide that this that operating outside of institutions was the path to go down? I think maybe Andri, if you'd like to start.
Well, off the top of my head, the two important factors are speed and also all sorts of administrative limitations, including also IP related issues that are really kind of differentiating a traditional or like a classical research institution and something like a community lab, where things are moving much faster, and B, there's people are, you could say they're much more diverse, but actually they're alike in some ways. So they're all of them are a bit of disruptors, so they like to kind of step outside the system a bit. And in terms of the kind of admin side, well, the intellectual property is one big thing. So if you're working inside an institute or a university, you always have to contend with, you know, who owns the rights to whatever you're doing. In our case, the people who are doing things own the rights, unless they have some very cruel contracts with their employers or research institutions that prohibit them from doing anything at all outside of their workplace, which is, to my experience, not that often. But it really, like, again, we are still quite a fresh undertaking, but based on the experience of similar organizations in the Nordics, like the CPH labs that I mentioned and shared labs in Norway, it really helps kind of people open up in terms of their ideas and what kind of things they want to experiment with and try, because you kind of get unshackled from a lot of bureaucratic stuff when you do your research or your startup building in such an environment.
I want to ask, so Andrew, you mentioned this sort of bureaucratic or administrative barriers. Josh, you mentioned in your introduction the mental barriers or overcoming mental barriers. Can you expand a bit more about that in relation to the question as to what made you pursue building your home lab?
Yeah, so I can't speak too much about the conventional way because that is totally opposite to the pathway that I took. I would say that my journey kind of self-evolved over time. And what happened was I started doing experiments and replicating papers that what I call real scientists were writing. And I was replicating them in my home lab environment. And it started off with first culturing, and then I was doing DNA sequencing, and then genetic engineering, and so forth and so on. And I very quickly realized that I was doing, at the time, what was state-of-the-art sort of research on the type of fungi that I was researching. And when I started to talk to other academics who were currently in their PhD programs, they would all kind of tell me the same thing and echo what Andre was sort of saying, which was actually they would tell me, don't join and go get your PhD. It will take all of the joy out of doing independent research, because I had complete autonomy over where I wanted to spend my time, what research I wanted to go into. And I was forewarned that if I were to go into an academic institution, I would lose all of that autonomy. I would not be able to get to decide necessarily what area of research I wanted to focus on. And so that was kind of interesting. And that's when I first started to kind of notice the disparity between the sort of independent DIY bio researchers and people in academic institutions. And I really started to try to think about, well, there must be some way to bridge the gap, because both sides have trade-offs. If you're an independent researcher, you lack institutional knowledge, which can be really, really useful. I mean, I was having to self-learn everything just by reading papers, and there were a lot of mistakes that I made that could have been avoided if I'd had someone experienced sort of guiding me along the way. On the other side, I have people in academia who admire the work that I'm doing and are jealous in some ways because they're behind a desk doing something that they just don't have the passion for. And they originally signed up to get their PhD because they had some innate desire or passion for exploring science in a new way. And then now they find themselves sort of handcuffed to the institution's way of doing things. So yeah, I just want to like kind of underscore and emphasize that it's not an either or. I think it's, you know, I'm all about developing a partnership between the two sides, because I think we both bring a lot to the table. We can learn from each other and we can help each other.
Absolutely. Sophia, you in our previous conversations, you mentioned how sort of your own motivations behind starting your home lab. Can you delve a bit further into that?
Yeah, so it was about 2019, 2020. I was a teenager. I wanted to learn about biotech, not only from the papers, but actually getting my hands on these things. I was like, I want to touch CRISPR. What does that actually look like? And unfortunately, in Mexico, I don't know if maybe it's just the people I interacted with, there was not such a great culture of apprenticeship, of young people interning even at academic labs, maybe because they'd had previous bad experiences. I don't know if people who didn't have a great passion for it, I don't know, but I didn't really get that chance at that time. And then the pandemic came, and fortunately, sort of the first way that I started doing biotech at home was by buying one of these DIY bio kits from the Odin. And yeah, that one didn't. That one made it through customs office, fortunately. So yeah, that was how I started. And afterwards, I gained an interest for plant biology. So I also started buying some reagents to do some tissue culture. And I actually want to point out that I resonate a bit with what Josh said about having a bit more guidance throughout the process. I think that I would have really loved to actually start doing bio at an academic lab because of that. I think just having someone literally by your side in real time, especially as a young person who knows absolutely nothing about biology, would have been quite helpful, and just in getting the foundations really, really solid and really, well, more clear.
Andrea, I think I'd like to maybe add to that in regards to what you think the role of community labs are, or in educating and helping educate sort of future biologists, and yeah, like what you think about that, and whether there's scope for this sort of to provide also the guidance that perhaps Sophia was not able to have at the time, and which Josh also would have appreciated.
I think that's one of the main goals of community labs. So obviously, when you bring many different people together, some of them are more experienced, some of them are maybe completely inexperienced but very curious. Cool things start to happen, and I've seen that in specific projects like iGEM, for example, where we had, like, for example, we started iGEM in Riga 4 years ago, and we at times we had like people from high school or even universities, and they quickly they were hesitant to join, and then they kind of dug in, and one of them this year is a new team lead. He's now like 3 years older, so he's well into his PhD. Oh, sorry, PhD, a bachelor's degree. So I think that definitely helps when you bring lots of different people together and they kind of mix and match. I actually have a follow-up question regarding this to Sophie and Josh. Do you think the emergence of things like ChatGPT and Claude has changed things a bit? So the AI assistants, you could ask many things. I've like personally I've experienced that it can actually be like, you cannot, maybe they will not understand all the pictures, but still it's like it's a big step forward. Obviously, having a person explain things to you it's much better and much more empathetic. But do you think that kind of moves things in the right direction?
Oh, I can go first. Yeah, I use LLMs or ChatGPT or whatever your favorite LLM is all the time, and it's an invaluable partner for me in my research. It's definitely sped up the ability for me to do deep research on a particular topic. I'm using it now to write protocols for me, and it's great because I can have it write protocols and I can give it specific constraints around like what supplies I have or reagents or what tools I have available to me, and it can give me a protocol that accommodates what I actually have available to me. Before, that required me to read a paper, read the tools in that section, and then do a lot of experimentation to see how I can swap out particular procedures with my home lab setup. So it's really, really helpful in that way. I still think, though, there's something to be said about in-person hands-on mentorship and guidance, because it's sort of like reading about how to play baseball or how to play football. You can read about it, but you're not really going to understand it or grasp it until you actually go out and kick the ball and play. And so that's kind of how
I watch a lot of YouTube videos on I Know Karate, kind of.
Exactly. So it's a fantastic tool, phenomenal. And I'm a little bit biased because, my background's in computer science, so I use it, to code as well. Yeah, and I think it's going to only have an ever increasing presence in all of our lives, but especially in biology. And I would say it's still early days yet on the biology side. It's making a lot of headway on the computer science coding side, mathematics, physics. Biology is getting there. We haven't, in my opinion, quite seen that big breakthrough moment where AI kind of revolutionizes biotech, but we're getting closer every day.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, right now I don't particularly use it for my own experiments, but I've used it, for, when I'm actually in academic labs, and it speeds up the learning curve. So, yeah.
Yes, and Lemana, on that note, in terms of again, back to the question on community labs and traditional spaces, you mentioned that you are making a state-of-the-art sort of research institute in Bosnia and Herzegovina. What are sort of the challenges in that, and what makes you pursue that on I guess in this terms on an institutional basis? Like, what's the benefit of this?
So yeah, maybe to start with the story of how VerLab Institute was founded. I don't know what is the situation in the countries from where my colleagues are from, but in Bosnia, there are no private research institutes. There are only public government-funded research institutes that are tied to public universities, most commonly, almost exclusively. So basically, everything started with VerLab Laboratory, which is a medical device inspection laboratory. And how I came there was through an internship. I started my internship there and then started working part-time for research, etc. But throughout the time, the research segment of the laboratory became so strong that we figured, okay, we could make an entire research institute out of this. And then all of the regulatory hurdles struck because we were the first ones doing it. Nobody else has done it before. And basically the legislation, the points to guide you through the process of establishing a private research institute were, well, not non-existent, but they were very vague. So we had to kind of go back and forth until we finally managed to establish the institute. Now, why did we opt in for this, and why didn't we just merge our research at the university at which all of us were teaching at? Well, the freedom of doing research that you really want. We are all about providing like a healthy ecosystem for all of the employees to grow, but to grow in a direction where they want. When somebody new gets employed, he or she, they have like absolute freedom to pursue their own ideas. Us who are seniors are there to support them, to teach them how to write successful grant applications, what are the tips and tricks, what is out there when it comes to funding, but they can write whatever they want. If somebody has a passion that is completely out of my scope of interest, it doesn't matter. I can still help them with these technical stuff. And personally, because I was I was a Marie Curie fellow, and I just recently finished with it. And I had several offers to continue my career in Italy, in Greece, even in Dubai. And all of those are great offers. It's state-of-the-art research, state-of-the-art facilities. But why did I decide to come back and continue everything that I was doing in Sarajevo? Because of the freedom. Because at those state-of-the-art research institutions, everything is constrained. You get a project, you have a boss, there's an entire hierarchy, you get your segment of the project, you develop the code, you develop a software, whatever, you get your part of work, and that's it. There is no creativity, there is no freedom, there is no more pursuing your own dreams. It's just doing work for the sake of the salary, and that's it. So that is
Right. Mm-hmm.
That is
The
why
freedom
we
of
did
it.
this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think let's discuss being able to fund these ventures, these community or home labs. How did you fund them, and what are the funding options like? Maybe Andrei, you can start.
I'll be very quick, just not to repeat myself in terms of the grant funding, but overall, this is what we do at the foundation. So we get a bunch of grant money from different sources, from like local, state, city and state, all the way to Horizon, which is the pan-European system of grant projects. And sometimes we kind of squirrel away some of the money because you don't have to like spend them all on, or you know, you have some surplus, or sometimes it's, in this case, we got some actual funding to support this. In the long term, we don't want this to be like a profitable thing. So at least this is not, we will be happy, but this is not our goal. So if it's paying for itself, that will be the best that we want to kind of stop at, meaning that, and of course, we don't want to charge students and people who are just curious about biology and SynBio. But there are startups and researchers with side hustles who are able to pay and are happy to pay for like having a bench or a fractional bench some part of the day or night or weekends, like depends on the taste. And that is something that we are now actively exploring. Again, there are a lot of questions like, how do you actually price it? Like, what's the contract conditions? Do they pay right away or later if it's a startup, or when they get funding? So we're still kind of, it's all very much work in progress. And the same thing in terms of funding the actual projects. So the private research institutions were mentioned earlier. And also, like, you know, some of the people who are here are startups. So ideally, we would love also to help them and support them financially in some way, either via equity or even maybe grants. And we're working on that too, but that is a longer process because it requires the place itself to have some track record, because nobody wants to like support stuff without a track record in the investment world and the grant world. So we're working towards that as well.
On the topic of trust and credibility, if you run a community lab or a home lab, and I know some, so for example, Josh, Sophia, you can speak to this. How do you establish this sort of credibility, and how do you establish this trust so that people partner with you, and who have you partnered with so far?
I can speak to that a bit. So when I fortunately had the chance to get a grant from New Harvest to work on cotton tissue culture, one of the first requirements was actually who in academia is mentoring you to do this. So it wasn't, I guess, that hard to establish credibility in that way, because I've been talking to mentors on that side, and they, were the source of credibility. And similarly for other sources of support. So it's a bit ironic, right, that still doing DIY bio, like academia, at least in my case, was what provided that credibility, at least at first. And then, I guess once you start getting the results, the work can speak for itself. If you actually show them how your lab looks like, or the results you've got from the experiments you've done, why would you why would a degree or anything else matter?
Maybe Josh, would you like to add something to this?
I'll just add, one of the hacks for developing credibility in the early days is to do a lot of free work for other labs and scientists. That was a big way for me to get my foot in the door. So, for co-authoring papers, I would offer to do all the work. Just like, you help guide me, since this is my first paper, I'll do all the work. I'll, put the data together, I'll write the draft, I'll collect, run the experiments. As much as I can do, I'll do it, so that you can just get another publication with your name on it, and I can associate myself with you, the institution, and also get credit for that publication. That's generally good advice for anyone in general across every discipline, if you're trying to establish yourself. And it's a good opportunity, because a lot of the scientists in the institutions are very busy. I've definitely had my share of times where I've reached out for help and got ghosted, and no one responded to me because they don't know who I am and they don't have time for someone like me and my probably amateur question at the time. So I think, like, trying to volunteer and do as much as you can within reason is a great way to get started. I think the other thing is publish your work. And nowadays, it doesn't have to be in a paper. It can just be in social media. That's been a huge way for me to develop, Sophia, writing blogs. But people love I take images of all the fungi that I collect, and many times it's the first time they've ever been photographed. And so people love those photographs, and that's a great way for me to get my name out there that I'm actually doing this research. And that's led to a lot of DMs and private messages from people who are like, hey, I noticed you were working with this organism. We're working with that organism. Are you open to collaborate? So I think just putting yourself out there and sharing your work with the world. And even if you don't have anything like definitive or final to show, people are really interested in just the process of you learning something. They want to see that you're going to try this new experiment for the first time, and maybe you used AI to help you write the protocol, and then it messed up and you made a mistake. But they want to see, like, the process, and they're very interested in that. And so that gets your name out there and will really help you.
Thank you for that. Kingston, I'm curious if you can speak to more related to what you mentioned earlier, relating to the standardization of protocols, standardizations of tools, and how this process started for Plasmigene. Your thoughts would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you for dynamics might be different. I'll just give a brief background, how we started and where we are right now. So I'm a PhD student, as I mentioned earlier, and the struggles that I faced with procurement made me, to start this company with, of course, my co-founders. In as much as research, there is funding in research, especially where I come from in South Africa. The time that it takes to receive those reagents is just too much, right? And we end up lagging behind, in terms of research and so forth. So we tried to kind of bridge this gap. Also, another important thing is that also the procurement process, there's a lot of bureaucracy at an institution level, especially if you are at a university, and it makes the process of procurement very long. And sometimes they might even tell you that they can't order from a particular company when that particular company is the sole provider for the reagent that you need. Then that becomes a problem. You might even need to change your project. So I think that's where community labs come in now. So for us, it's not trying to replace the traditional institutions, but we are trying maybe to say, let's complement what they are doing, right? And fill in those gaps. So we have established a platform where we mainly construct plasmid vectors, right? So I mentioned about Saver database. So Saver database, they provide standardized plasmid vectors for free. So we order those for free. Then we have the Reclone community, the Agents Collaboration Network. So these have been helpful for us because what they provide us is they provide us with the gene sequences for enzymes that are out of patent. So we have a collection of more than 120 gene sequences of enzymes that are out of patent. So some of the enzymes that we now manufacture now, so we manufacture these enzymes in-house. So you understand that in the process of maybe constructive plasmids, you are going to need some enzymes, maybe the DNA polymerase to amplify your DNA and so forth, the ligases. So we have the DNA parts from the server that we have. We also have the enzymes that we use to join these parts from the Reclone community. So that's how we are trying to build, this platform. And the beneficial bio community. So this is a community of biology owned companies. So people are doing different things. Some are manufacturing kits for DNA isolation. Some are manufacturing enzymes and so forth. So we kind of collaborate on that now to say we kind of share information on the work that we do. For example, if we don't have the expertise in creating DNA isolation kits, we can get that knowledge from another company which is within the community. So these are companies that are mainly located in the global south, Brazil, Africa, and so forth. So that's what we do. And with the protocols now, with standardization of protocols, there is a website called protocols.io. Yeah, so I think that's where we can get some protocols, and also within the community, the Reclone community, we also share some protocols. So we have some monthly meetings where we discuss what we are doing and so forth. And during those discussions, someone might say or discuss what they are doing and the kind of work that they're doing, and someone might be interested in the protocols. So we then share these protocols, and they are online. Anyone can access them. They'll be there on the website for the Reclone community. So basically, that's what we are doing. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. So the Reclone community and protocols.io. Let's have a final statement from each of you before we open it up to audience questions. What is your sort of, from now, your project for the future, and your what is your project that you are currently what problem are you working on? Sophia, if you'd like to start.
Ooh, interesting. My project. So my project right now is Biopunk, and I think there I write and think about biology and biotech, not only from a scientific and sort of startup perspective, but also a bit philosophical. I ponder some philosophical questions, right? And so I do believe that a lot of the ways in which we think about the impacts of biology, of biotechnology in society are not very common to write about or to think about or to talk about in our engineering and scientific communities. However, I deeply care about that. What does it mean for, to allow or not genetic modification in human embryos and stuff stuff like that, the very edgy stuff. So yeah, just asking different questions about that to influence the way that the most influential biotechnologists, like everyone on this call, will develop those things. That is my project.
Andri?
On an organizational level, our main goal right now and looking forward is to make sure that innovation and especially new business, new startup creation in synthetic biology and biotechnology is maximized, at least in our region, but hopefully also like throughout Europe and beyond. So we're doing startup incubation, and we're doing all sorts of support programs for the talent. So we think that we believe that in after some time, nobody is going to be shocked to see a startup founder who is not like a PhD in biotechnology doing symbio. Just like these days, nobody is surprised when somebody's doing a software startup not being like a software engineer, or maybe like having one in their team, or maybe even none. So we believe that things will be moving in that direction. But of course, also for those who are PhDs, professors, etc., the opportunity should be much wider, we believe, and that's what in a global sense we're trying to kind of facilitate. And on a personal level, I'm really interested in enzymology, enzymes, especially enzymes that help with circularity problems like plastic pollution, as well as interfaces between electronics and biology.
Kingston, what problems are you trying to solve? What's your hope for the future?
Okay, thank you. So as an organization, as Plasmigene, our main goal right now is that we are actually in the process of creating a plasmid vector repository. There are few plasmid vector repositories in the world, and all of them are in the global north countries, and it's very difficult for people in the global south to import plasmids, especially DNA parts and so forth. There are a lot of issues that, or there are a lot of problems associated with importing DNA parts. So we want to establish that in our region, and also the bigger picture is actually to democratize biotechnology. We import more than 90% of biotechnology goods and services here in the global south, in Africa especially. So we want to try to actually reduce, that over-dependence, so that we make biotech goods and services locally available at an affordable price, so that we actually advance the biotech revolution, so that Africa is not left behind. I can say if you randomly pick a student who is graduated with a degree in biotechnology in Africa, chances are that they might not have hands-on skills on basic, laboratory, techniques. So this is a problem for us. So for us to have a competent and skilled and qualified biotechnologists, we need to bridge this gap. So basically, that's what we are trying to do as a company.
Thank you. Lemana, please, what are you working on, and what's your hope for the future?
So currently, I'm personally working on a software to prenatally assess the risk for neurodevelopmental disorders in children. And the final aim is to launch it successfully, to make it available worldwide, and with it to decrease the incidence of conditions such as cerebral palsy, because if detected prenatally, it can be treated while in utero. So that is the big plan. So hopefully it will come true.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And Josh.
Yeah, so I'm going to continue to go out into nature, find non-model organisms, and screen them for the next great natural product, which could be an antibiotic, an antifungal, or some sort of interesting enzyme. That's the big goal. The secondary goal is to continue to share my journey and encourage others to just get started. I think the more of us that are working on some of nature's most difficult problems, the faster and better off we're going to be with finding solutions.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Very inspiring, all of you. Now I'd like to open up the questions to the audience members. Please raise your hand and then we can come to you. Yes, Seon, please. Seon, you can start. Either write in the chat or Jake. Right, you can write your message in the chat and then we can get to it. Jake, if you can start.
Yeah, hi everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for that. That was a really enjoyable panel. I really appreciate everybody coming out today to talk about what you're doing. I think it's really cool. I want to ask a question that I hope will be a little bit provocative, because I think we're living in provocative times for DIY biology. And in particular, I want to get your take on a tension that has always existed in DIY biology between being outsiders, thinking of yourselves as outsiders, and playing by the existing institutional rules. There's always been this kind of like punk mentality in DIY bio that like we're gonna stand outside of the existing institutions because they're too bureaucratic, they're too conservative, they're too slow. We want the kind of freedom to work on what we want and not on what the institutions want. But on the other hand, there's this tension because a lot of the money comes from government grants or from academic grants, and because a lot of the science is still happening in major research universities. And so there's this desire by a lot of people who do DIY bio to be seen as credible by mainstream researchers, to have active collaborations with mainstream researchers, and to be able to get funding through the same grant processes that mainstream researchers get. And so this has meant in practice that you got to play by the rules, right? Like you can't do anything in a DIY bio lab that would be considered unethical or unserious by a mainstream scientific lab. So there's this like insider-outsider tension. We seem to be living through a moment where a lot of the mainstream institutions are damaged or are weaker or are under threat. There's a lot of like mistrust of mainstream institutions is at an all-time high, at least in the US. The funding for a lot of these sort of typical grants is being cut, and the institutions are really shaking and they're under attack. Well, this sort of outsider approach to science is seemingly on the rise. And so I think about like Zhang Kuihe, for example, who did these sort of rogue experiments in human embryo modification. 3 years ago, he did that. He became a pariah. He was jailed for doing that, and nobody wanted to work with him. Today, he's back. He has a fully funded research facility in Texas, and he's a Twitter celebrity with 100,000 followers, right? And so I think that if you look at that, like from a DIY bio perspective, I think a lot of people have to look at that experience and say something has changed. They say, 3 years ago, you had to play by the rules or you couldn't get anything done. Today, maybe you can break the rules, and maybe you can even be rewarded for that. And so this is the big moment. I think it's a moment where like anybody in this space should sort of reconsider their position, how they think about ethics, how they think about their posture with respect to the mainstream institutions. And so I guess, sorry for the long-winded question. I want to hear what people think about that. Is like, do you feel that the institutions are getting weaker? Do you imagine that there might be a future where your funding sources is not primarily government grants, and where one of your main goals is not getting mainstream academic credibility? What do you think?
I'll jump in here. I've got a lot of thoughts. I mean, you covered a lot of ground. We could spend the whole hour talking about all of those points. I'm purely self-funded. So it's virtually impossible to get government-funded grants if you're not affiliated with an institution here in the United States. And that's a major barrier for anyone who wants to become an independent scientist. Although if we go back and look at history, we can see Charles Darwin, Stephen Wolfram, who runs Wolfram Alpha, John Wilkinson. There's a ton of history of people breaking away from these institutions, self-funding their research and making major breakthroughs. But they had to do it outside the institutions. I think to some extent you're making the case that we have won the battle of democratizing biotech, because like computing, it's becoming more and more accessible. The cost of sequencing is incredibly low. The tools that you need to do a lot of great science are accessible. Some aren't, but many of them are. I think there is another interesting philosophical question, which is, without an institution, how do we enforce the ethical boundaries of what it is that people do their research on? And it's a great topic of discussion. I would say we should look at other disciplines where the potential for harm exists. Certainly there's a potential for harm in developing software that could, hack into major organizations and cause all sorts of harm. Some people would argue biology has greater risks and harms involved there. And I do know that there are in the United States, there's a congressional team that is working specifically on legislation that will do things like restrict DNA synthesis. Companies have to screen the oligos that are being requested to be made to ensure that someone isn't trying to manufacture a biological weapon, for example. And so I think we need some of those safeguards. So yes, I think though that with great freedom comes great responsibility. I personally try to err on the side of caution and not go into that realm of working on anything human. That's kind of my boundary. I feel like once you start working on GMOing of humans or human health, for me, I feel like the barrier for responsibility is really, really high, and you need to make sure that you're doing that under the guidance of, within the law, but also following proper ethics and just doing things the right way. Obviously, there's a ton of gray area there, and really interesting topic. So great question, and I'll pass the baton to someone else.
Before someone else answers this, I think also on top of Jake's question, how are you, if you own or you have the responsibility of sort of heralding the community or whatever, how are you going to ensure that the people you are associated with are going to maintain the same codes and principles as you do?
Oh, before I collaborate with someone, very often I'll know ahead of time who they're affiliated with. You can find what work they've done. I don't do any sort of questioning or interviewing of people. And where do you think about this? Typically, the engagement will be on a very specific topic, and either we're aligned on it or we're not. We might have a discussion about how to pursue that particular research topic, and these things will emerge. But that's not unique to just biotech. I would take that approach with anybody that I was going to collaborate with on anything. You know, whether it was who knows what it might be. It could be even computer science world, or it could be a contractor I'd hire for my house. I would prefer not to hire a contractor that is stealing things from people's houses, as an example. So yeah, I don't, you know, for me, the vetting is sort of, you kind of just learn through a little bit of intuition, which I get is not as, which is very opinionated and biased towards one's own preferences. But you can learn a lot from just people's public personas and see what work they've done, whether it's in academia or it's just what are they posting on social media. What are their opinions? So.
Does anyone else want to answer Jake's question? Then we can go on to Sean's question.
I'd like to quickly add that I think that in Latin America, we're in a very interesting position for these times, and sort of new funding institutions in terms of medical tourism, right? And it's kind of ironic that these areas in the world in which regulations are a bit more gray and less clear can actually become, in some ways, hubs for the edgy, punky biotech stuff that has less ethical guardrails. So like Infinita City in like Honduras, or Prospera, and many others are examples of that. I've talked with people who are establishing research centers in like close to the US-Mexico border and stuff like that. So it'll be very interesting how that unfolds as well.
Great, Sean, please ask.
Can I add another 5 cents real quick? So when we started actually like hands-on building the community lab, we've been thinking a lot about the inputs. So the actual infrastructure, the consumables, and also the intangibles like the expertise that's been mentioned in this discussion as well. And we also started thinking a lot about like what happens globally or like even maybe locally if the cost of all of those inputs continues to drop and becomes, let's say, like 10 times cheaper, maybe 2 orders of magnitude cheaper. Like if synthetic biology becomes accessible to a wide, you know, array of people, some of them professionals, some of them probably not. And one of the conclusions that kind of springs to mind in that is that it seems inevitable that this will continue to happen. And in this case, the community ingredient, I believe, will play a very important role, not only in terms of like being friends with other people who are doing this, or like being a mentor, supporting other startups, but also talking about those things actively. So in Europe, let's say 10 years ago, if you started talking about synthetic biology with a person outside the field, he'll be like maybe you should don't do that. And now it's changing. Now we'll have the new biotech hack very soon, hopefully. And it's a great direction. So the more it is out in the open, the more we can develop institutions which are maybe more like suitable for this exponential phase, because the traditional ones are definitely not. I don't think it's fair to expect them to kind of always be in step, because that's not their main function in many ways. But I'm optimistic in terms of newer institutions and kind of developing, if this discourse continues out in the open and continues to be ethical and continues to be at least self-policing, and maybe later it's going to be like regulated by those newer, more flexible institutions. And in terms of kind of ethics, we're probably going to be moving towards more relaxation, because a lot of things that are currently ethically impossible are probably so, not because they are kind of bad, but because the technology doesn't work good enough. So when the technology is very good, it kind of becomes in many ways irresistible. And I wasn't alive 50 years ago, but I'm pretty sure that if like my grandma 50 years ago learned that it would be possible to screen babies routinely for their sequence the DNA of the babies And in some cases, maybe if you find a congenital disease, even do an abortion, that would be like a hysterical piece of information for people 50 years ago. And now it's in many places, it's a very common process. So I hope that we're going to be moving more towards technologies that are so good that are, they are irresistible.
Sion, please ask your question. Okay, we can't hear you, but we so you wrote down your question on the chat, so we can answer that. So Sion has a question regarding groups like different crypto DAOs like bio.xyz, Cerebrum, DAO, DAO. Oh yes, we can hear you.
Finally.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you're aware of the crypto DAOs. They're like a group that's been here since like 2022. The Bio XYZ is the main group, and they do a bunch of subgroups like the Hair DAO. They're a research organization that does like research on hair, like to regrow hair. The Cerebrum DAO does research on like, I think, brain biology stuff. There's a bunch of groups like these online. They don't really hire from like academia. They mostly just look at your skill sets. A lot of the work is like open basically, so like it's public GitHubs and things. So if you want, you can come and join to help. And they usually get their funding from the crypto groups. Like it works kind of like a stock, but the holders of the coin can vote what to research on basically. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but like, you all have any thoughts on these groups? They're very much removed from academia.
So I've heard of them. I've been invited to participate. I've even been invited to have projects funded by them, but I've never moved forward with it. So I don't really have any strong opinions either way. I'm generally a crypto skeptic, so I may not be the right person to ask about it, although it seems like every day I'm being proven wrong because apparently a lot of people believe in it and the valuation just keeps going up every day. But yeah, that's sort of the extent of my knowledge.
Yeah, they get their funding from crypto, but I don't think they like do crypto work basically. Yeah. Like I know they ran a biohackathon a few months back that got some rep. Yeah.
I know quite a few people from Valley DAO, which is one of the Europe-based organizations like that, and I personally believe they're moving in an interesting direction. The actual mechanism that they're using for basically they're just handling the finances with blockchain, right? And that's one of the ways to do that. Again, I would concur with Josh that I'm not convinced that it's the best or one of the best ways to do that, primarily because I do believe that there needs to remain like a solid interface with traditional institutions if this is to be like a long-term thing, both in terms of money, like finance, and also in terms of IP. And I know that those people are working to make it happen or to make it better. But for now, it doesn't seem like for me, it seems like the whole crypto blockchain thing is more in the long term is going to be hindering rather than like what's the word? Release? No, like accelerating the process. So there still needs, like, at some point you will have to contend, like if you're a startup growing out of this, at some point you will have to go into the real world, non-crypto world, and like deal with the IP and the institutions and the courts and the governments and the taxes and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know how that transition happens currently, and I hope they're working on it, but there needs to be a way that this is smooth. Otherwise, it's just another part of this whole crypto. I'm not going to call it hype, but it, you know, this is some people would so like overhyping stuff is never a nice strategy, I believe. So what they're doing right now is interesting and their direction is nice, but we need to see like in 5 or 10 years how they actually solve the problem of interfacing.
I know VitaDAO, they do drug research. They recently got a $4 million grant from Pfizer. I think they got decently big, but yeah, that's true. They're definitely a lot smaller right now in the grand scale of things.
I'm pretty sure Pfizer didn't pay them in tokens. I assume
Yeah,
that was
they
like real money,
didn't.
right?
It was
So
cash.
that's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have centuries of case law across the country for all of these things that Andres mentioned: intellectual property, partnerships, equity. So there's a way to accomplish what they're trying to do using traditional methods. I think that there is a very strong community around crypto technologies, and they've figured out a way to blend those two together and tap into that really vibrant community that DAO as well. The idea of like a decentralized autonomous organization, and so I think that's why it continues to work for them. But yeah, time will tell how it actually fleshes out, because at some point it's going to become real and someone's going to want to dig into the legal aspects of it.
Thank you for the question and the answer. Let's have one more question from the person who raised their hand, if they're still there. TRRJSC. Or maybe that was an accident. Okay. On that note, then, thank you so much, both panelists and treasured audience members, for joining us today. And I really hope that you enjoyed the panel. It was really wonderful to have you. Please, everyone, connect on LinkedIn, share with each other all these informations, and collaborate and be amazing. So thank you so much, and take care of yourselves. So bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.